This area near Sunland Park, New Mexico is a focal point for migration. Smugglers can often use these mountains to get migrants through, and it's very treacherous. And right here is where you can see the border wall end. Mexico right there, just a few steps away from us. So these barriers have been put in place, and they're being used to try and help by agents sometime.
Governor Abbott.
No questions.
Governor Abbott, would you be able to speak to us about school vouchers? Just last night, a school board decided to lay off 300. I know. Last night, a school board decided to lay off 300 teachers, and another local school district has decided to close down several schools. You continue to advocate for school vouchers, school choice vouchers. Can you talk to us about addressing those concerns people have that this will put more of a strain on public schools? Mr. Abbott, can you address those concerns? Behind me over here is the International Bridge of the Americas. So this is what all of this is about.
I do feel like we need to talk about this, and I want to give you the opportunity to address it, but you yourself admitted that you'd run your campaign leaning towards seeking the death penalty, and this was an attack that killed 23 people, but it was a racially motivated attack that was against people that looked like most of our community. What do you have to say to the people who now feel betrayed and maybe even misled by this decision?
Yeah.
And I've been in a lot of courtrooms, and I've seen people in pain trying to find answers. But something I haven't seen, which I've been seeing over the past 2 days, is an overwhelming amount of love. Both for those who are in pain, for the community who's stood behind them, as well as for Crucius, the man who tore their lives apart. And I'm sorry for getting emotional, but I've just never seen compassion like this before.
Deportation flights have been happening for years, but what's different now is the Trump administration is using military planes to get people out of the United States faster, and these planes are leaving out of El Paso. This one specifically will be going to Guatemala.
The protest is over, right? So what happens, what's next for this movement, and how do you create change that actually changes policy?
The White House is looking for TikTok stars. In the high-stakes jungle that is the White House press briefing room, where you sit means everything.
Now, this is the first time we've seen Patrick Crucius on camera since 2019.
This plot of land has been the site of a lot of contention here in West El Paso. It's the site of a proposed housing project, and neighbors living right here are upset about what it could mean for the future of their home.
We're in Sunland Park, where a lawsuit has been filed against the Camino Real Regional Utility Authority, also known as CRUA. And almost exactly a year ago, we started receiving complaints from people living in Sunland Park in Santa Teresa about having slimy and discolored water. Now, this would go on for several months. And during that time, I started doing some research and found reports showing that CRUA actually had arsenic levels in their water above the legal limits. So I took that research and those concerns to CRUA. I want you to listen to what their response was back then. There's a notice of violation in September of last year, November of last year, December of last year, January of this year. Is this what you want to be seeing from the utility company?
In this situation, a person would have to drink a number of gallons of water a day over a time span of years for there to be any recognized health risk.
This is the water report, the Consumer Confidence Report for 2022. And in it, it shows that you guys were in violation of high arsenic levels most of the year as well. And we see the same thing for 2022, 2019, 2018, and 2017. And I was able to find public notifications dating all the way back to 2013. So does that constitute a long period of time to be consuming water with arsenic in it?
I'm not a health professional. I can't address that. Everybody's body is different, and how they process arsenic or any other substance that occurs in the environment is going to change from person to person.
Well, since that conversation, communication from CRUA has been sporadic at best. And in the year since all of this has been happening, they've actually gotten a new executive director, Juan Carlos Crosby, and for the most part, they've actually been able to keep the level of arsenic within legal limits. according to CRUA and the New Mexico Environment Department. But that brings us to today.
We're also live streaming this, right? Because we want to open up the conversation to people who maybe didn't get the chance to do this. So we're actually getting in a Facebook comment right now from Paulo G. Sanchez, and he says that abortion is murder. What do you guys think when you hear that? What message do you think it sends when you use language like military age when describing those who rushed 836?
I think that just describes the age of the person.
I've also never heard you use the phrase military age. And when El Paso and this is like being used at a national stage, do the words that you use matter?
If you had the opportunity to talk to the people in charge of the quality of the water that you're drinking, that your grandchildren aren't able to drink, what would you want to tell them?
Que nos ayudaran, pues, más bien.
Going into somebody's house, taking everything out and throwing it outside and say, okay, now I'm taking the house. Same thing. Because that is their house.
What do you feel that, you know, it says to you that the city of Las Cruces has made this ordinance? Like, what does it say about you?
I think it's we're being targeted. I really do.
It's not every day that a district is looking at closing several schools, but that's the reality that EPISD is facing. And we've been hearing concerns from parents, community members, as well as the district itself about these closures. And that's why we're here tonight at EPISD's board meeting, where they're going to be talking about the next steps they're going to be taking when it comes to the destination district redesign. And parents are making their voices heard.
I urge you to vote no, and at the very least, delay.
In Texas, schools get money for attendance. So you have all of these students, and for each student, you get money, right? But what's happening is we're seeing a lot less students. People just really aren't having kids anymore. So that means a lot less money. What happened before is we had, again, all of these students and all of this money and all of these schools, right? So there were enough schools for the students. Since we're seeing less students, you have these students, these schools, and it costs this much money to run all of these schools. But because there isn't the attendance, there isn't the money. So they're having to manage using this amount of money to do all of these schools. So what EPIC is proposing is taking some of these schools and consolidating them. So 2 schools become 1 school. And this is going to be happening in neighborhoods all across the city. And the district is saying that if they do this, they'll be able to manage the cost a lot better. It'll save people's jobs and programs that kids need. But a lot of parents aren't happy about this, as well as members of the community.
He couldn't believe he had caused that much harm. It was an awakening for him. It was like, did I do that? Yes, you did.
People are definitely gonna hear this, and I don't think they'll believe that. And you know, there's a lot of members of the community that do want him dead. You know, what do you have to say in response to that?
I mean,
I see this, right? And I think like, oh, this is super easy to climb. I don't see how this would stop anyone from coming into the country. We've been out here in the desert searching, and there are human remains right behind me. And the group, what they do is they try and identify these with ribbons like this pink one, letting them know that there are remains here. You can see a bone right here. There's a skull literally right here. Complete skull right here. There's a jawbone right over there.
How up close were you allowed to get? What kind of access were you given?
Yeah, so when we first got there, we were about a football field away from the actual plane, so very hard to actually see things for ourselves. Tried seeing things through the camera. We were eventually allowed to get in a lot closer. Still very, very brief moment that we were allowed to actually be there to see things. And again, the migrants had already been loaded onto the plane by the time we got there, so we weren't able to see that process come through. But again, Border Patrol also not really answering or allowing us to ask questions. What's different now is the Trump administration is back in power, and with it comes a stricter approach to immigration policies. Now, the line has always been there, but now it's more defined. And from up here, we're getting a bird's eye view at what that looks like. And I reached out to every district in the borderland to ask what they're doing about this. How are they making sure that students and community members and families feel safe? But we're asking these really hard questions that really right now schools don't have the answer to. They're looking at changing policies that have been in place for decades. and community members are scared.
There's been an ongoing battle between Texas and the Biden administration over this. It's razor wire here along the U.S.-Mexico border, and here in El Paso it goes as far as the eye can see and actually blocks off the Rio Grande right here. So Texas has been arguing that the federal government isn't doing enough to keep people from entering Texas illegally, and this is their response. They've said, we're taking matters into our own hands. But the federal government says that it stops Border Patrol agents from being able to help migrants, and you can actually see some clothes right here along this razor wire. Even though we're talking about this razor wire, it's not about that. It's about who has the power over the border and who makes up these policies and what happens with this.